That's perfect.
We have the first item we have, you're going to see on tonight's agenda, revolves around two position recommendations. What we're doing is we're asking the board to consider discontinuing two positions, a custodian vacancy that we currently have, and it's a roaming custodian who goes from building to building, as well as the confidential secretary position at our transportation maintenance building. When you look at coronavirus and COVID-19, it has financial impacts, and in looking at those and our budget, we have determined there are ways we can maximize our resources while maintaining services and meeting the needs. In the area of the custodian position, that is a vacancy right now that we're just simply saying, let's not fill it. It doesn't include the board from in future years to make a decision and bring it back. But we're saying at this point, when you look at the impact financially of COVID-19, we have to be smart about our staffing and our vacancies. And we're asking the board to consider discontinuing that position tonight. And again, nothing precludes you from bringing that back, so be it. And additionally, we had a retirement in the transportation busing office, and we're asking the board the same thing, to look at discontinuing that position while we look at alternatives to filling it. We can always replace it in the future. Again, when you look at COVID-19, it has some impact on us financially and budget-wise, like the entire nation does. But we're looking at those, and we've determined that there are better ways we can maximize our resources while maintaining the services and meeting the needs of the position and of the duties that are responsible of that position. So we think we can get smarter, we think we can get better, and we think we can win the moment here and have some savings for the board. And respectfully, we're asking you to vote on that tonight. And at this point, Ms. Lowry, I'll take any questions from you or the committee.
I don't have any questions. I just think it makes a whole lot of sense to consider this option. Given that the positions are either currently are vacant or will be vacant due to retirement. And I think anywhere that we can look at still meeting our needs and being able to have a positive impact on the fiscal situation, I think we need to do that. We owe that to our taxpayers.
Yeah, we agree as well. And we also had, Jared has done a nice job working with, Greg Trout in the area of maintenance and making sure they can handle what this looks like without that position of the custodian, as well as what it looks like for the secretary. So again, as we discussed, we fully recommend to discontinue those positions in order to maximize our resources while maintaining those service and needs. So I think it's well said what you previously mentioned.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments, questions for discussion?
No, I agree.
Okay, then I think we can move on.
Yes. Also on the agenda tonight, Ms. Lowry, you have an updated policy from PSBA on federal fiscal compliance. And once in a while we get these updated, and I asked Jared to prepare for going over this. So Mr. Cronauer, if you can explain to the board the rationale behind the first reading. Again, if there's any changes that the board likes to make, we can always make that before the second reading. But Mr. Cronauer, if you could, federal fiscal compliance, and Mr. Zohorchak, if you want to add into anywhere you see fit. But Jared?
Yes, thank you. This is not a new policy. We already had this policy in place. There's just really two minor changes that we are adding. And one is under internal controls. We are just adding the wording effective control and accountability, including segregation of duties, which is just, for those of you who may not know, is just meaning you don't have your payroll. As an example, you don't have your payroll person also doing your payroll bank rec. You try and separate duties so that there is a double check. People really are double checking each other, and it just kind of limits the risk of fraud. So we have no problem adding that simple phrase into the policy under guidelines. And then the other area that the policy is changing more, a little more dramatically or in a bigger fashion is under employees and time and effort reporting. And I would say that this change is probably mainly due to the current coronavirus situation. And it's really just adding, and I'm not going to read it word for word for the board members who, it is all posted with the policy and personnel. It's really just adding wording to kind of protect us during what is happening right now, the COVID-19, where everything is shut down, and what our time and effort reporting would look like during a time when staff isn't working and we're paying them with federal funds. it just is ensuring that we as a district are protected and continue to pay those employees with those federal dollars during a shutdown when they may actually not be working, but we still got the federal dollars to pay for it. So, like I said, just some minor changes to this policy, improvements, not taking anything away. And I think as administration, we agree with it all. So,
Great,
any
thank you,
questions?
Jared. I don't have any questions. Anybody else have any questions? I think these changes make a lot of sense.
I agree.
I agree also.
All right, on to the next item.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Lowry. You're seeing 4 different policies being updated, and this is only for their first reading, but it's a reflection of Act 93 of 2019 and Act 11 of 2019, which made modifications to Pennsylvania's crime code regarding the use and sale of tobacco and vaping products on school property. So what you see here is a change now includes the language of vaping to be included in our code of conduct. Policies 222, which are students, and 323, which are our staff, they're mandated by law. And then policies 707 and 904 are, for the public. And here's the one point I'll need help on from the board with is getting the pulse of their temperature. So the policies prohibit the possession, use, purchase, or sale tobacco or vaping by students, which is self-explanatory based on the law. Employees and members of the public attending school events or using school facilities, they may possess it, but they cannot use it or sell it. So here's one option that I need some insight from the board. And I'm fine either way, meaning we can do this or not do it. I just don't have my pulse on how many people may use tobacco products at sporting events or different things along that line. So the board has some optional language where in these policies, you can permit use of tobacco products in designated areas, which must be located at least 50 feet from school buildings, stadiums, or bleachers. Where I've seen it most, Ms. Lowry, is at sporting events where someone may want to have a cigarette or use a vape and they have to leave the facility at least 50 feet off ground and then they're able to get back in. This is optional. We're not required to. I only bring that up because I think everything else is pretty straightforward. We have responsibility to notify our parents in advance through our website and student handbook, which the principals maintain and will approve later this summer. So we're well ahead of the curve, but really at this point, I need just to gauge the board's interest about either, yes, you're okay with the 50-foot requirement for adults, or no, tobacco-free means tobacco-free. And you have some leeway as to what direction you want to choose, but I'm just asking for some input in that one from the committee.
Personally, I think it just gives you one more thing to try to enforce and police and differentiate between who's a student and who's a guest and who's an adult. And I think you could potentially be expending a lot of energy on that when it's just as easy to say tobacco free is tobacco free.
Yeah, I think that.
What about the rest of you, committee members?
As a tobacco user, I could tell you that during a long game, I get very tense, and it's easier just to go to a location where there are like-minded people. It could be 100 feet away, 100 yards away, but someplace where I can have a little bit of tobacco isn't a horrible thing and makes me a lot easier to get along with during the last half of the game. I love people, but I don't love people that much. So that's my view. Anyway.
Okay.
I think just don't give yourself another thing to try to have to enforce. It's just going to be a situation where you end up like with people that, like Tammy, that are needing their tobacco and you're trying to enforce them to not have it. It could be a lot of time spent trying to do something that's unenforceable.
So Cinda, are you saying you think we should allow it at least 50 feet from the school building?
Yes.
Okay.
And Ms. Lowry, if the board says, look, yeah, I'm okay with it, but I want to make it 75, 100 feet, you have that right as well. So it's really, you know, to Ms. Blank's point, you have some ways to modify whatever the committee decides. Again, this would not be applicable, obviously, to students. It is just for adults, but I'll defer. Anyone else from the committee?
Well, you definitely need to make it, if we're going to allow it, it definitely has to be a certain distance away with no exceptions. And a good far distance away is fine with me too. Buy low parking lot would be fine, but so, okay.
Okay. Well, how about this, Ms. Lowry? We'll see if there's any other input, but we can always, again, this is just the first reading. I can always put that language in, then send that out this week to the board.
Okay.
And then look at it. But please, I don't want to, if there's anyone else has a comment, I'll take that as well. But I just want to throw it out there as well.
Okay, I think that makes sense, Mike. Thank you.
Okay. The next one we have on our list is policy. Oh, yes, sir.
Mike,
Yes, sir.
Mike, this is Walter. I think that I think on this tobacco thing, I think the thought process, even though it's primarily applying to the adults, I think the distance, we need to have the students in mind for that distance and be somewhat consistent in our message to them. So, you know, maybe 50 feet's fine, or maybe it needs to be more than that. My point is that I think that the determination of the distance should be more driven by our consistency with the students than anything else.
Yes, sir. I think you bring up a valid point up, and what I can do is I can allow Greg to work with, you know, the principals, in this case, mostly Mr. McElhaney, because when you talk about these type of events, they usually happen at the high school, and they can come up not only identifying a location, but a number they feel comfortable with, how many feet away, and then we'll bring it back for a second reading and see what the board's thoughts are at that time.
And the other thing is, there may be an issue where, you know, the distance from the entrance to the new gym might be different than the entrance to the front of the school building, say, or the parking lot where the plays are, or you know, I guess that's my point, is and I think you're absolutely right. Let those guys figure out what a good distance would be to be consistent with our policy toward the students. Thank you.
Do you have any other comments?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I think you need to remember also that an 18-year-old is an adult under the law. So you have to make sure you have that, and can still be a student. An 18-year-old can be an adult, considered an adult under the law, even though there's in loco parentis. But if they're outside and they're 50 feet beyond, they're still an adult under the law. So I think that's something you have to consider with how much footage you put from the building out for adults. Students would be able to smoke under that. Just throwing it out there. I know there's in loco parentis, but I also know that 18 is an adult in Pennsylvania under the law.
No, thank you. I mean, that's a great point. I think in this case, I think it's worth, you brought up a great point worth mentioning. I think we'll be protected because they're still enrolled in our schools and still be subject to our rules. But I think you're absolutely right. So it's a great point to consider. Wade, I think you're going to say something. You seem to.
Yeah, I would like to say something. And my perspective, please understand, is from a drugs, alcohol, tobacco-free zone. And I don't recall us having many problems with adults not using tobacco on the property. And, you know, as we're positioned, the adults do have an opportunity to go, I say, off the property, which is, you know, a certain amount of feet away from there. My concern is the health and well-being of kids around cigarette smoke on the school property, and sending mixed messages that if we're having adults smoking on the property and telling kids we can't, we're trying to be consistent with that message, not from a sake of, well, an adult is allowed and a student isn't, but just sending the right message that that is not the practices we want from a health promotion standpoint. And I would ask at this point, without having any more information about it, that we maintain those healthy environment of drug, alcohol, and tobacco-free zones on the school property. All due respect, Ms. Blank.
So it's been so long since I was at the high school. We do have a completely, totally alcohol and drug-free zone at the high school. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So then I'm going to change my mind. What is done now with faculty and students who, it used to be they would get a chance, they needed a cigarette, they would go out and they would smoke in their car in the school parking lot. Is that permitted anymore, or is that strictly enforced that they cannot do it?
As far as I'm concerned, it was never permitted. And if somebody is doing it on a property, then I would go and have a conversation with that individual. But to my knowledge, no adults, faculty, or otherwise are smoking on a property. Now, an occasional football game, you'll catch a whiff of somebody smoking something, smoking a cigarette somewhere, but it's not a condoned practice. We don't say to faculty, okay, for your planning, you can go out in your car and smoke a cigarette. That is not permitted. And if it is occurring or brought to my attention, then it is addressed. That, you know, we can't say one thing to the kids and then practice something else on the property.
I'd like to chime in if I can, that I think all of our properties should have this restriction of no alcohol, drugs, cigarettes, et cetera, all the properties, and with no exceptions. If you're on our property, you're not partaking. And it should go to, including the maintenance garage, it should be across the board. There's plenty of places that do this. You step on our property, you better not be smoking.
This is Terry. I agree. I'm glad, Wade, you spoke up, because actually I was just finishing dinner, but I was going to chime in and say the same thing. I mean, I'm not in favor of sending a mixed message. We, try to educate our children to have the best health that they can, and this is really not paralleling that message that we're trying to put forth. So, thanks.
I'm changing. Monkey see, monkey do is a very apt colloquialism. And if I can get off property in order to smoke for the hospital or any of those other places, I'm certainly an adult enough to do so at sporting events or other events as well. And quite frankly, although I know my kids will never, if they want to live, pick up a cigarette, doesn't mean that other kids won't go, hey, you've got one, let me have one too, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I can change that vote.
Thank you, Tammy. That's very big of you to do that. Thanks.
All right, well then I guess we don't need to put, at least from what I'm hearing, a distance to this, because it's not an exception we're wanting to consider. Is that what I'm hearing?
I agree with you, Ms. Aubree. What I'll do is I'll make sure that exception's not in there, send it to the board for the, then you have from now till next month to review it before the second reading, if that's okay.
Sounds great. Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next on the list, what we have here is our school security personnel policy needs updated. What happened is in Act 91 of 2019, they changed some of the qualifications and requirements for school safety and security personnel. In this particular case, our security guards need to have the NASRO training. Jared and Mike Travis and I already looked into this. And Jared, I believe we have certificates from our vendor that these individuals have met the new training requirement and they are ready to go. So simply, it's just updating the policy at this point. I believe they have all the qualifications necessary. Jared, can you please confirm?
Yes, we have them all on file for the 2 full-time that work in our buildings, and then days that they may not be there, that substitutes come in. We have a list of approved substitutes, and we also have their certificates as well. So we are good to go right now.
Wonderful. Thank you all.
Sure. Those are all the agenda items we have for this evening. And then if it's okay, Ms. Lowry, I'd like to move on to.
Mike, this
Yes,
is,
sir.
Mike, this is Waller. Just a quick question. And I know this subject has come up, you know, perhaps prior to your time here. But we still employ some assistants during football games and possibly basketball games. I think they were under the term security at one point, though I'm not sure that's the same. These weren't through the Armstrong, but rather these were unarmed folks that helped with crowd control parking and that sort of thing. I brought up before that these folks should receive some sort of training on an initial basis and then on an annual recurring basis prior to the beginning of the school year. Do we know whether or not the district has implemented something like that? My concern is that you'll have these folks that are basically they're all good people, but they are not necessarily ex-law enforcement, and a lot of times they're the first person that maybe is on the scene when we do see an infraction, such as a tobacco use or alcohol, or maybe possibly something worse. And so my concern is that this is a good opportunity to look at that training as well.
No, Mr. President, you bring up a really good point. I think there's some site level training that occurs for Mike Travis and the high school principal who oversees high school athletics, but also at recent events in recent times, I've been seeing the armed security guard or armed vendor at different sporting events as well. So I think you're starting to see a transition or a combination of both. Our own local personnel who serves in area of security with Mike Travis being there, as well as a security guard from Armstrong Security Company, who in most cases is a retired state police or policeman and who's able to carry weapons. So I think you see a nice balance between the two. Jared, Mr. McElhaney, anything you want to add to that?
You're correct, Mr. Vukovic. We'll see Stan, and we also see the junior high security guard, especially for the football games. They will help with patrolling here, and they have a great presence and a great rapport with the kids, and they handle themselves very well with our public.
My point, Wade and Mike, is that there should be some level of training given to the other folks as well, and that level of training be documented, whether it's a 1 hour or 2 hour training session or whatever. And again, I would maybe even defer to Bubba for some guidance there, or the people from Armstrong. But I just think that in this day and age, not to provide them certain training as to what their roles and responsibilities are and proper procedures if something goes down is something that we should in fact have documented.
Yeah, we can definitely work on that, sir. Mike Travis, we can speak with him and get some trainings in addition to what they're doing currently, and we can do that. That's not a problem. Wade, I don't see a problem with it, do you, sir?
No, not at all. I think it's a great idea.
Ms. Lowry, if it's okay with you, may I move on?
Absolutely.
Walter, are you okay, Mr. President? Is there another comment you want to make? I'm sorry.
I just said thank you, and then I had to cough, so I shut my microphone off for too quick.
Yes, sir. Ms. Lowry, I just want to say thank you for allowing us time to talk about end of the year locker clean out, picking up of items. I wrote to the board, this would probably go to Buildings and Grounds, but we thought it was prudent to talk about it tonight so we can then in return make sure the board's comfortable with what we're doing, with our guidelines, our policies, and how we're going to handle this. And then we need time to communicate this with families, because what we don't want to do is wait till the last minute and then try to expect a family to come to, quite possibly anywhere from 3 to 6 schools to pick up information. So what we want to do is really talk to you about what our plans look like at a building level and how, and rest assured the board that they go in line with Governor Wolf's requirements on large gatherings. As you know, Indiana County is moving into yellow zone on Friday, May 15th. That'll allow us to have, more than 10 teachers in the building, but we're still going to practice social distancing guidelines. And under most scenarios, all scenarios, I believe, we're not going to allow kids in the building. So they're going to do something similar to what we did at the computer pickup and at the cap and gown pickup, where it's a safe, secure, and controlled environment. And what I'll do, if it's okay with you, Ms. Lowry, we'll just start with the high school, go to junior high, then we'll go to the 4 or 5 buildings, and we'll end with the primary buildings. And I know it's going to be somewhat long, but I think the board needs to know how we're handling this, because we'd like to communicate with the families sometime this week, so they know what we're doing, and so they can plan accordingly on their end. So if it's okay with you, Ms. Lowry, I'll turn it over to Wade. He'll go first, followed by the other building principals in that order.
Absolutely. And I think it does belong here because we are making a change to a policy and a process that we have in place. So
Yeah,
thank you.
absolutely right. Mr. McElhenney, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Vukovich. For the senior high school, we wanted to be able to meet those challenges of social distancing, health and safety guidelines, while at the same time, ensuring a process that we would have the school district property so that we could outfit our students the following year. We've done ours in stages. We did a cap and gown pickup. Prior to that, we had the paras come in. We had teacher aide. We had attendance officer. We had the nurse, LPN, come into the building. And that crew systematically emptied all of the student lockers. We're able to bag the contents and label those and put them in alphabetical order by their class in the lower commons as well as the old gym. So everything is bagged and we're ready to return the property to students. We were able to do that with cap and gown. We were able to return the seniors their property. If they had any siblings, we gave that out as well to those. We did that via curbside pickup or delivery. It worked out well that way. We could place things in the trunk. We were able to have minimal interaction with the students and their parents. They seemed to be very appreciative of the way in which we were able to handle that. So we want to extend that also toward the end of the year because we have underclassmen who have school property and we also have their property. So we're looking for an opportunity to exchange that in a safe and healthy way. So we also have, at the same time, we need to distribute our yearbooks. So we wanted to use that as an opportunity. So when the students would come, how it would look is when vehicles would enter the drive, they would make the first right into the lower student parking lot. They would proceed up to the new gym entrance, at which point the exchange of property would occur. We're going to be asking students and parents and guardians to identify those objects by teacher name. We will collect that. We have their items bagged already. We'll put those in trunks or in truck beds, whatever the vehicle has. We will take that property. We'll take it into the new gym. We will have approximately 60 or so tables, and they will have teacher names on them. And they will also have the property list, the school property list, inventory list, whether it's books, calculators, or senior Chromebooks. And they the individuals will be helping, will be crossing those off. So then we'll have an idea of what has been returned and what is outstanding. And then that property will be returned to each of the teachers' classrooms. So when we do our preparation or shutdown for the school for the summer, we'll be able to do that in a way that will allow our maintenance custodial staff to do the deep cleaning that they do every year over the summer. As far as the students, they will continue driving, and when they approach the intersection, if they are not getting a yearbook, they'll make a left and they'll exit the school property. If they are getting a yearbook, they'll go across and they will do like we do for our lunch pickup in Chromebook. They will drive in the bus loop in reverse fashion down to the lower commons where Mrs. DiStefano and others will be passing out the yearbooks to those students. We have identified June 1st through 3rd for doing that simply because of the volume of supplies here at the school. And also we are doing hours of 8 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. We want to keep it open and flexible because we don't want any major congregations of vehicles, students, parents, etc. here. We figure if we open it, make it flexible, then, depending on people's work schedules, then they'll be able to come by the school to be able to do that. So we feel confident that we're able to uphold those safety and health guidelines. We feel confident that we'll be able to get the materials back and place those in an area where we can inventory that and then return those to the classrooms. And we feel confident that we have those materials ready for the next school year to go and being able to return everything to the kids that they have.
Wade, can I ask, everything will be outside then?
Yes.
Your tables, etc. That's no.
No students or parents will be coming into the building.
Good.
But we'll put all the tables in the new gym so we can keep all those materials secured in inventory.
Okay. That's very good.
Thank you.
Wade, will there be lunch pickup going on during this time at all, or will lunches be done by then?
No, lunch pickups will still be going. Those are school days. That's why we wanted to extend our hours, because we didn't want to jam up the lunch. But we were able to do, whenever we did at Caps and Gowns, we were able to divide the drive. It's wide enough. We put cones down by the lower commons. That way people who would get their lunch pickup could stay to the right and proceed, could exit. And those who picked up the Caps and Gowns went on the left. It was a senior class that day that we were doing that. It was, I could say, a constant trickle, but there was never any more than 2 or 3 cars backed up, and we're prepared in the student parking lot to be able to single file those cars up to the door.
So there won't be any kind of a traffic jam situation coming out of the lower student parking lot and going across to go up around the bus loop backwards?
No, I was going to talk to Mr. Travis and get somebody to direct traffic at that point. That's a common traffic area for our school. So, we have traffic procedures, or so to speak, for that area. If we have somebody directing traffic, that'll be helpful.
And Miss Cinda, our state and local police are always helpful. Maybe what we could do is even reach out to them to have some sort of presence and continue to help out. They've been nothing but kind and considerate. So I don't think it hurts to even ask them if the board's okay with that.
Yeah, that would be great.
And Miss Lowry, before we go on to the next one, just so the community's aware, on the agenda, each one of the plans are hyperlinked. Well, so if the board wants to see some additional information that we may not get to, because we're only asking for an overview, that you have that to refer to as well. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Minnick, you want to walk them through the junior high's plans?
Hello, Mr. Vukovic, and hello, everybody. I am going to defer to Marilyn. Marilyn has offered to take the lead on this assignment, so she's on tonight, and she asked me if I would like her to speak on this topic. And since she's been primarily the lead on this task, I'm gonna defer to Marilyn.
Sounds good.
Good evening, everyone. Our plan is similar to the high schools. Our paras are coming in and bagging up the student items. We are going to do it according to homeroom. We will also include art projects, any items from any classrooms, any medication, anything like that will all be bagged up with a student's name on it. The way their traffic flow will be is they'll come off of 4th Street and come up the Shryock Avenue and come into our parking lot. And we'll probably have them, depending on the amount of traffic, we could probably have them snake around in the parking lot, getting the traffic, if there is any, off of 4th Street. That parking lot allows us a lot of room. They'll pull up to the first door, which is door number 9. It's going to run similar to, I would say, like a McDonald's, where you pull up and you pay and then you move to the next one and you get your item. It's the same kind of idea. They're going to pull up to the first door. They'll return any items that they have, which means calculators, books, library books, anything like that that the student has. We are going to ask them to label it in a bag with the teacher's name on it and the student's name. We'll take that and then we'll get the student's name. It'll be radioed inside, and then someone inside will get that student's bag of items. The car will then pull up to the next door, and they'll just retrieve the items. Everybody stays in the car. We'll just take and put them in either the back seat or the trunk for them, and then they'll exit out of the parking lot.
Sounds like a good plan.
What we'll do, if it's okay with you, Ms. Lowry, I'm going to turn the floor over to Ms. Eisenman. Ms. Tavagian is at an online virtual ESOL, English second language get together, so she can't be with us tonight. I know her and Aaron planned together. So Aaron, if you don't mind debriefing the committee about what's happening at the 4-5 level.
No problem. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. Because both of the schools are located on streets, we are going to use the same kind of procedures that are already described. They would pull up in front of the school. We'd have paraprofessionals or staff members there with yellow vests on. They go up. We're asking that the parents bring their items in trash bags or in a bag with the student's name and homeroom teacher on it. Hand the bag. We'll have them pull up to the next spot there, and then the para will radio into the inside, and they will come to the door so that there's no cross contamination. They will hand the bag to the para so that we're not touching doors by different paras and those kinds of things. And then if we do get a backup on School Street, we would pull off on Divine Street and use that side as our secondary way if we happen to get a lot of traffic. And Horseman is going to do something similar there. Any questions?
No, sounds pretty. It sounds easy. I know it's going to be a lot of work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ms. Lowry, if it's okay with you, then I'll move on to the primary building.
Absolutely.
Mr. Banny, are you speaking for Dawn's behalf as well? I know you guys probably work together on it. Are you going to handle for both primary buildings?
I was only prepared to handle for my building. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Please let us know what's going on at Ben Franklin.
Okay, so hi everyone. At Ben Franklin, we're going to be operating under the same dates as every other school. And our paras have been coming into the building. Starting this week, teachers are also permitted. There's a sign-up sheet, so no more than 10 individuals will be in the building at a time. That way, we also can track where people have been so that we can clean their rooms afterwards. And they are beginning to bag up student materials that are in their desks, anything that was maybe left behind in a cubby, and whatever else the teacher deems is necessary to go home, like maybe some workbooks for summer work. We also had Mrs. Zackrell, our art teacher, come in with some para-educators to help, and they've sorted all of the art projects. There's quite a few. We were just getting ready for our art show, so that got canceled. So we have a lot of art projects to get home to our families. So once we have all that ready to go, I'll transport it down to the cafeteria. When families come on the pickup days, I've asked that they please put their name of their student, grade level, and the teacher's name on a piece of paper and place that piece of paper on the dashboard. That way, staff members that are outside as cars pull in can see what needs to be picked up and where they need to go to get it. If there is a traffic jam, I was also worried about that, Cinda. We'll just have cars pull into the parking lot. We've asked that they stay around the perimeter of the lot. They'll come in, pull in past the ball field, head towards the playground, and then swing around to the cafeteria door. And that will also allow breakfast and lunch to be distributed in the front of Ben Franklin and no crossover traffic there.
Sounds great, Kelly. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, everybody will put the things in their trunks. I figured you got that, though. Thanks.
Ms. Lowry, I know Mr. Springer's going to join us, and we'll save him for when he does. I think he's having technical difficulties. While we wait, though, it's okay if I turn over to Mr. Cronauer. He can talk to the board about the student wellness policy, number 246 review.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mr. Cronauer? I think Mr. Cronauer may be tied up at the moment. I apologize. What I think he's looking for here, are there any recommended changes from the board or from the committee itself? We're in a process where we've been doing a lot of the work that we feel we need to be in compliance with the new law and with the changes to the law. And the public is also encouraged to complete the review and submit any info to Mr. Cronauer. So the results will be posted live for people to view, but I think it's pretty straightforward. And we just want to kind of just check in with anyone and see if there's any additional feedback before we turn it over to Mr. Springer, who's joined us.
Anybody on the committee have any recommendations, changes, discussion? Okay, I think that's a no. We have none.
Fair enough. I agree with your interpretation.
I agree.
Last we have Ms. Lowry, if it's okay with you, Mr. Springer. I know you're trying to get on. I apologize. He was having some technical difficulties, but he wanted to review his plan for end of the year clean out as well. Mr. Springer, the floor is yours, sir.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. The East Pike plan was a whole lot simpler when I had a main entrance. So we've had to make some adjustments with that. So basically, the plan is going to have all of the kindergartners and first grade parents picking up on the loop that's closest to the B-Wing playground down there by the old rec building. So we'll kind of have a table set up for kindergarten and then a table set up for first grade apart along that sidewalk area there. And then parents will just kind of come into the main entrance of East Pike and roll around the drive there and stop at the correct table, whether it's kindergarten or first grade. They'll remain in the car, and then the staff, following all the guidelines that we are to follow with gloves and masks and whatnot, will bring the student belongings, which are already bagged up, to the car, set them in the car, and then the parents are away. The same scenario plays out in our car kid loop, which is on the other side of East Pike in the A wing. They will just pull off to the right in the loop there at the second grade and third grade tables, and the procedure is exactly the same. And that's really the crux of the pickup plan.
Okay.
And
So for you, I'm going to hope that we have really nice weather.
We have, not that it's rained or snowed lately, but yes,
Exactly.
we are hoping for nice weather. If not, we have the easy ups we'll use over the
great.
tables.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I did have an overhang that I was planning on using about 2 weeks ago, but it's
it'll all be worth it.
tore down.
And Ms. Lowry, if it's okay with the committee, now that we have the board and the committees on the same page with our end of year procedures, and again, this is until late May, early June, towards the end of the year, we're going to go ahead and communicate with our families so they can start planning, because I think that's going to take some time, especially if more than one child in the district. So we're going to go ahead and start communicating, and that way the families know what to do and can mark those dates, and we'll over communicate and send some additional reminders as we move forward. But we think it's pertinent at this time to start that communication if the committee's okay.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And, there may be a couple people who need some exceptions, and as long as they have a central place they can call rather than having to call multiple schools, I think that would be great.
Okay. And that's all I have this evening, Ms. Lowry. If there's anything else from you or the committee, we can entertain them as well, but that's all I have, ma'am.
I don't have anything else. Anybody else on the committee have anything?
Did Jared come back?
Jared?
I did. I'm so sorry I had to step away.
Mm-hmm.
I apologize.
Jared, I explained to the board that you're just seeking some input at this time on a student wellness policy, see if there's any additional changes that the public is encouraged to send you any input or any thoughts on that, and then the results from whatever data you collect will be posted and made available. That was just based on our conversation. Anything I missed or you want to clarify or go in a little bit more deeper? Because I did not.
No, this review of the wellness policy is it's a new requirement through the USDA and through running the cafeteria program. We just have to do every 3-year review. And because it is new, they're starting the clock now. What I have done so far is I sent the policy and also the assessment template tool to all of our, I sent it to the board members. I also sent it to all of our nurses and all of our health and phys ed teachers because they really do play the biggest part of implementing the wellness policy itself. So they have done a review and they reviewed the sections that they mainly deal with. What we really have to do is just show there may be no changes to the policy. So it may not take any board action. We really just have to show that we've done a review. I wanted to give the teachers and I wanted to give the administration and the board time to review the policy before I open it up to the general public. So we'll put some social media information out there with it as to where the public can go if they so choose to review it for us. There's no requirement. We just have to make sure that they have the opportunity to do that. I will summarize any of the findings of the ones that we do get back, and we'll post that online. And if there's no review or no changes, there's no board action on it, but we will have all the paperwork together. So when we get our annual, I guess not annual, about every 3 years, we're audited from the state on our food service program. We'll have that to show that we took the proper steps in place. So if there's any board members who have any questions, or if you need the documents again, if you haven't had the opportunity to review them, please let me know and I can email them out to you.
Great. Thank you, Jared.
At this point, Ms. Lowry, that's all we have.
All right. Well, then, if that is all we have and we have no other comments or questions, then I think we are adjourned.
Okay.
Thank you all.
All right. See you, everyone.